The teacups were still warm. The almond cookies sat untouched. And yet, my husband was never coming home again. My name is Evelyn Mercer, and for 15 years I thought I had the kind of marriage people envied. My husband Graham was calm, elegant, always one step ahead in business, but never unkind. He brought me lilies on Sundays, paid the mortgage without question, smiled gently when I asked about his day. We didn't have children, and somehow that felt intentional, a peaceful sort of emptiness. But nothing prepares you for the kind of silence that arrives when the illusion breaks. Graham died on a Thursday. They said it was a heart attack, massive myocardial infarction, the doctor had murmured, as if Latin softened the loss. But the truth is, I didn't care what they called it, because the man I loved was gone. And in his place was a strange new grief, quiet, creeping, and suspicious. The funeral blurred by like a slow-motion film. Everyone dressed in black hands on my shoulders saying he was a good man, but I couldn't feel anything. I clung to Naomi, my best friend since college, while people I didn't recognize told me stories I didn't ask for. And then Lana, my sister, showed up. Too much perfume, too tight a hug, too smooth a voice. "I'm so sorry, sis," she whispered. Graham was like a brother to me. But her eyes didn't hold sorrow. They held something else. Amusement, maybe, or triumph. Later that night, she stood in my kitchen pouring herself a drink like she lived there. I know it's not the time she said swirling her wine, but Graham loaned me some money. I was hoping we could settle that now that... "You're taken care of." I blinked. "What money?" She tilted her head and smiled like I'd asked where the sun went at night. "Oh, I guess he never told you." Something in me cracked. That night, I wandered our house like a ghost, running my fingers over chair backs, wood floors, the framed wedding photo that suddenly looked like it belonged to someone else. I found his keys still on the table, neatly placed just like always, except one of them. One I had never touched. The garage key. It was a different shape, ornate, cold. I'd asked about it years ago and he'd laughed. Just a bunch of greasy tools. You'd hate it. And I'd believed him, because I didn't push. That was our marriage, unspoken boundaries, dressed up as trust. But now I had nothing left to lose. The next morning, I drove to the address. I'd never visited a warehouse tucked deep in Charleston's old industrial district. The building was crumbling, the metal door rusted weeds spilling over cracked asphalt. I hesitated before unlocking it. The key turned with a groan, and for a second, I wanted to walk away, but I didn't. Inside wasn't a garage. It was a shrine. Maps, charts, photos. Dozens, hundreds of photographs pinned to the walls in perfect symmetry, and in every single one of them, Graham. But not the Graham I knew. This version wore flannel, smiled wide, looked younger, freer, and always standing next to him was the same woman. Dark hair, sharp eyes, radiant. She was at least 10 years younger than me. In one photo, they were on a beach, in another at a cabin in snow, then one at a candlelit dinner. Time-stamped August 2024. That day, I had cooked his favorite meal. I had waited by the window for him to return from a client meeting. But there he was in that photo beside her, and a young man. Tall, early 30s, same dark hair, same sharp jaw. On the back, Nora and Miles, August 2024. My knees buckled. I grabbed the nearest surface, a metal desk, and then saw them stacks of files. Bank transfers, shell companies, tax records I'd never seen before. One folder was Medical Crescent Heart Institute dated 2 months prior. I read the diagnosis 3 times: ischemic heart disease. Stage 3, risk of sudden cardiac arrest. He knew he was dying. And instead of preparing me, he disappeared into this other life, another woman, another son, and the man I buried. He wasn't my husband. He was a stranger who had kissed me on the cheek 2 nights before and whispered, "You're the only one for me." My chest tightened. I turned toward the door, heart pounding, tears finally threatening to break. And that's when I heard it. Footsteps, soft, careful, like someone didn't want to be heard. I spun around. There, standing in the doorway, calm and composed, was the man from the photograph. He had Graham's eyes. "My name is Miles Blake," he said quietly. "Graham Mercer was my father. He had my husband's eyes, but I'd never seen this man before in my life." I didn't answer at first. I just stood there, my hand gripping the desk, like it was the only thing keeping me upright. He stepped forward carefully, like I might shatter. "My name is Miles Blake," he repeated. "Your name is Evelyn Mercer. I've known about you my whole life." The air in that garage turned thick like molasses pressing in on all sides. "You're his son," I whispered. He nodded. "Yes. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. I never wanted that. How long?" I asked. "How long have you known about me?" "Always," he said. "He told me he was married, that you didn't know about us. My mother, Nora, never tried to interfere. She respected his choice." "Your mother?" "She passed last year," he said softly. "Pancreatic cancer." After that, I started digging into his financials, trying to understand what he left us. I found things that didn't add up. I sank into the dusty chair behind me. My head spun. The floor didn't feel stable. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice low. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a worn, folded piece of paper. "This." He handed it to me. "It's a draft of a will, unofficial. He gave it to me 2 weeks before he died. Said the real one would go to you. But this was in case something happened before he finalized things." I unfolded the paper with trembling hands. It was written in Graham's signature looping cursive. My name. Miles' name. Mentions of something called Sable West Consortium, corporate assets, a vault, and one strange line: access to remaining documents secured in office vault, code linked to personal item gifted to EM, the necklace. My fingers flew to my collarbone, but it wasn't there. I had tucked it away after the funeral. It had felt too heavy to wear. Now it felt like a cipher. "What is Sable West?" I asked. "One of his private firms," Miles said. "Not on the public record. He used it to move money internationally." Why? He paused. Because he didn't trust the people he was working with. After my mother died, I found transfers I couldn't trace. Offshore accounts. Things in my name I didn't authorize. "So he knew something was coming," I said slowly. Miles nodded. "He wasn't just preparing to die. He was trying to protect you, and maybe me, but he ran out of time. The silence between us held weight. "There's more," I said, "isn't there?" Miles glanced toward the door. "I think so. He left trails. Someone has to follow them." I stood slowly and looked around the garage again. This wasn't a shrine anymore. It was a crime scene, a puzzle, a warning. I needed answers. I needed someone I trusted. So I called Naomi. Within 20 minutes, I was curled up on her couch, the sapphire necklace lying on the table like a detonator. Naomi sat beside me holding a mug of tea I couldn't drink. When I finally told her everything, the garage, the woman, the child, the draft will, she didn't ask questions. She just held my hand. "I can't go home," I whispered. "You're not going alone," she replied. "Whatever's behind that vault, we face it together." The next morning, Miles picked us up. The three of us sat in heavy silence as we drove downtown. Graham's satellite office was in a steel and glass high-rise that I'd never stepped foot in. He'd always said it was just for quiet work, private meetings. But it wasn't just an office, it was a sealed life. Miles had a key card. He listed me as co-owner, he said. The receptionist didn't blink as we passed. The elevator rose with agonizing slowness. On the 14th floor, Miles led us into a sleek gray office space. It was cold, empty, no photos, no warmth, just precision. And behind the desk, a large abstract painting. Miles lifted it gently, revealing a recessed panel in the wall. "The vault's behind here," he said. I reached into my bag and unclasped the sapphire necklace. There was a tiny hidden mechanism in the clasp. I turned it counterclockwise. Click. A slim metal plate fell out no bigger than a SIM card. Miles slid it into the reader. The light turned green. Beep. The safe opened. Inside were stacks of documents, a flash drive, a small wooden box, and a single silver key marked Federal Trust Deposit Box 307, downtown Charleston. Miles began scanning the documents. Some of these names, "These are international banks," he muttered. "Wire transfers, cross-border activity. This wasn't just a side business." I picked up the flash drive. My fingers trembled. I didn't plug it in. Not yet. Then I opened the wooden box. Inside was a ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond. It wasn't mine. Inside the band, engraved letters. N always. Naomi gasped beside me. "That's not for you, it's for Nora," I said, numb. He bought her a ring. He was going to propose. Maybe he already did. My voice cracked. This wasn't about infidelity anymore. It was about love. He loved her. He built a life with her. I was the performance. The wife who smiled at dinner parties, who arranged lilies in the foyer. The placeholder. Then Miles handed me a letter. My name, Evelyn, was written on the front. I unfolded it with shaking hands. "Evelyn, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I never had the courage to tell you the truth. I was weak. I built 2 lives because I couldn't give up either, and it cost me everything. I did love you. I know that sounds hollow, but I did in my way. What I left you isn't just a mess. It's power. Use it how you choose. Burn it. Expose it. Walk away. But know this, they're coming. The others. The ones I worked with. Be ready. Graham." I sat in stunned silence. No one spoke. Because what could you say after something like that? He knew the end was coming. He just didn't stop it. You think betrayal breaks you, but sometimes it shows you exactly who you were sleeping next to. I didn't cry after reading the letter. I couldn't. Tears felt like a luxury. What I needed was truth, and I knew exactly where to find it. That night, I drove to Lana's condo, one of those glass box high-rises on Charleston's North End. Sleek coated gates, underground parking. Expensive. Suspiciously expensive for someone who always complained about tight months and just getting by. I didn't knock politely. I pressed the bell like I owned the building. She opened the door, barefoot wine glass in hand, wearing silk pajamas. Her makeup was flawless, her posture too relaxed. Well, she said, raising one perfect eyebrow if it isn't my grieving sister. "Come to inspect the widow's inheritance." "Cut the crap, Lana," I said, stepping past her. The living room was modern, cold, impersonal, just like her. But what caught my eye was the photo frame on the marble console. A picture of her and Graham, laughing, champagne flutes in hand. The date 5 years ago. I froze. "What is this?" She followed my gaze, barely flinching. "Company holiday party. You were sick. Remember Graham didn't want to go alone? We had a blast." Her voice was too casual, too practiced. "We always got along well," she added with a hint of mischief. He said I made him laugh. How well I turned and stared her down. "Tell me, Lana." How well her smirk twitched. "I know about Nora," I said coldly. "I know about Miles, about the garage, the offshore accounts, the ring, the letter, the will. I know everything." She didn't blink, just sauntered over to the liquor cart, topped off her wine, and said, "Fine. You want the truth?" She set her glass down. "I'm pregnant," she said. The words didn't hit at first, then they crashed over me. "It's Graham's." The room tilted. 10 weeks, she continued, voice like velvet. "I found out a week before he died. He knew. He said he'd take care of everything. He even told me—" Her voice dropped. "He was going to leave you." My nails dug into my palm. "You were still seeing him. After Nora died." She shrugged. "She was never meant to last. I was the one who stayed. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move." "You slept with my husband," I whispered. "Don't act so shocked," she replied, lips curling. "You had the perfect house, the perfect marriage, while I struggled with rent and compared resumes." Then Graham started showing up, listening, helping. Her eyes hardened. "You were his routine. I was his escape." I didn't remember raising my hand, only the crack of palm against cheek. Her head snapped to the side. Her wine glass fell, shattered. But she didn't scream. She smiled. "There she is," she said, "the real Evelyn, not the curated version, the one who just realized she's been living in someone else's illusion." I stared at her, disgusted, heartbroken, rage rising like floodwater. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you wouldn't have believed me," she snapped. "You never saw me, not once. You looked through me like I was some failed version of yourself. This," she gestured to her belly, "this isn't about you. This is mine. You didn't take something I said. You stole everything." She stepped closer, voice suddenly low. "That baby is your family now, whether you like it or not." Something inside me snapped and settled at the same time. I looked her dead in the eye. "I'll honor what Graham left. For the child, not for you." Her expression faltered. "You mean that I don't know what I mean?" I said. "But I do know this, I'm done with you." I walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't feel guilty. I wasn't Evelyn, the perfect wife, anymore. I was the woman holding every broken thread and deciding who to tie it around next. That night, I didn't go home. I went to Naomi's. The sapphire necklace burned in my hand like a secret too heavy to carry. She opened the door, took one look at me, and said, "Sleep first. War later." But I didn't sleep, because war was already here. The next morning, Miles picked us up. Naomi refused to stay behind. "You're not walking into a safe with international money trails and secret children without a third set of eyes," she said, throwing on her trench coat. We went straight to Graham's downtown office. The receptionist didn't blink when we walked in. Another wall Graham had built perfectly polite, professional, impenetrable. Upstairs, we scanned the documents again, hundreds of pages, a maze of asset transfers, dummy firms, tax shelters. Then we found it Silver Key. Tag-marked bank safe deposit, Federal Trust Box 307. "I recognize that building," Naomi said. "It's discreet. High security, old money." We didn't hesitate. 20 minutes later, we were in the basement of the Federal Trust Charleston's most exclusive private bank. A vault manager glanced at my ID, then at the key. "It's been years since this box was accessed," he said. "It's registered to Sable West Consortium." He led us past steel-reinforced doors, marble floors echoing underfoot. Then finally, he left us alone in a secured room. I slid the key into the lock. The box opened with a quiet click. No cash, no passports, no gold bars, just a manila folder and a photograph. I lifted it slowly. It showed Graham, Miles, and two other men, arms crossed, laughing in front of a black SUV. One was sleek, charismatic. The other looked like he'd chew glass for breakfast. On the back of the photo, one name stood out, Damian Wolfe. Miles's voice dropped. "That's him. He called me after the funeral. Wolfe and Gideon Cross, Graham's associates." I opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, payoffs, shell company trails, and one chilling file marked in red crane cross blackmail insurance confidential. I looked at Miles, and in that moment, I realized Graham hadn't just left behind a trail. He'd left a loaded weapon. Now it was up to me to decide who to aim it at. Secrets don't just hide in safes. Sometimes they hide in silence. We didn't leave the bank vault feeling triumphant. We left feeling watched. Even Naomi, always the calmest in the room, kept glancing over her shoulder. Miles walked faster than usual, jaw clenched, and I held that manila folder like a detonator, because that's what it was. Graham hadn't just kept evidence. He'd kept insurance. That night, Naomi lit a fire in her hearth and poured bourbon instead of tea. Miles sat on the floor, the flash drive resting on the coffee table between us like a snake. We weren't sure we should wake up. "You don't have to do this tonight," Naomi said. "I do," I replied, because I needed to know the full measure of what Graham left behind. No more shadows, no more guessing. I plugged in the drive. A single folder blinked to life. For Evelyn. Inside one video. Video file 2024 1007 MPB for 10 days before his death. My fingers hovered, then clicked. The screen opened on Graham's face, but not the man I buried, not the polished suit, not the practiced calm. This Graham was exhausted, hollow, his shirt wrinkled, hair uncombed. He stared straight into the lens. "Evelyn," he said, "if you're watching this, I'm either dead or out of time." He exhaled hard, rubbing his forehead. "I lied to you. For years. I thought I could control everything, keep you safe by keeping you out. But the walls are crumbling." He leaned forward. "There's someone you trust too much, someone who's dangerous." My stomach turned. "It's Lana," he said flatly. "She's not just an affair, she's a threat." The room stilled. He continued. "She said if I left her, she'd go public. With the accounts, with the companies, with you. She knew everything. She dug into my files when I was sick. She found Sable West. She said she wanted control, said she wanted a legacy." He paused, then lowered his voice. "And there's more." He swallowed. "You remember when Nora passed away, car crash? No witnesses. They said the brakes failed, but she had the car serviced the day before. Full inspection. Everything cleared. I couldn't move. Lana knew about the pregnancy. Nora didn't. That was the difference. I was going to leave Lana. Told her I couldn't keep the lies going. 2 days later, Nora was gone." He looked away. "I can't prove it. There's no evidence. But I know what I know." His gaze returned to the camera. "And now I'm leaving you the only thing I can. Proof of everything else. The transfers, the offshore accounts, the men I worked with, Gideon Cross, Damian Wolfe. If they come for you, use it. And Evelyn, if you choose to walk away, I won't blame you. But if you fight, don't fight alone." The screen went black. None of us moved. The air felt like glass. Naomi was the first to break the silence. "Lana killed her," she said. "Or at least, she made sure Nora never stood a chance." Miles didn't speak. His fists were clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. I rose from the couch and walked to the window. Outside, Charleston was quiet, streetlights humming, trees still, but my world shattered. Again, I turned to them. "I'm inviting her to brunch," I said. Miles snapped his gaze toward me. "What she doesn't know, we have the flash drive," I said, "or the vault records. She still thinks I'm grieving, still thinks I'll crumble." Naomi stood. "Evelyn, are you sure I'm not doing this to confront her?" I said. "I'm doing this to look her in the eyes, one last time, then I'm walking away." Miles nodded slowly. "She'll lie to your face," he warned. "Let her," I said. "I'll smile back." The next morning, I called her. "Brunch," I said. "Let's start over." "For the baby." She hesitated, then agreed. We met on Naomi's porch, the same place Graham's secret first unraveled. Lana wore a pale blue maternity dress, her hair curled perfectly, her lips painted soft pink. "He kicks when I drink orange juice," she said, laughing, like we were just sisters again. I smiled. We sat down. Naomi served tea, then left us alone. "I'm glad you called," Lana said. "I was worried you hated me." "Why would I hate you?" I asked gently, tilting my head. "Because you slept with my husband, or because you're carrying his child?" Her face stiffened. "Evelyn, this is hard on me too." "No," I cut in. "What's hard is realizing the woman who shared my childhood shared my marriage." Lana blinked. "I know about Nora," I said. "I know about the vault, about the accounts, about Sable West. I know everything, Lana." She stared at me, lips parted. "You can't prove anything. I don't have to." I reached into my bag and set the flash drive between us. She paled. "You're not going to court," she whispered. "You wouldn't." "No," I said. "I'm not." She relaxed too soon. "Because I'm not wasting another second of my life chasing the past," I continued. "I'm going to walk away, leave you with the money, the child, the house of lies you built." She blinked. "You think that scares me?" "No," I said, rising. "But it will." Then I walked inside where Miles was waiting. I didn't say a word, just nodded. And in that silence, we all understood Graham's game was over. But mine had just begun. When you have nothing left to lose, that's when they should be afraid of you. I didn't go home after brunch. I went to see Reed Harrison, my father's old lawyer, the one man in Charleston who never blinked at scandal, never hesitated at shadows. He read every file from the safe, every bank record, every photo. Then he looked up and said, "Do you want to press charges?" "No," I said. "I want protection, leverage, insurance." He nodded. "Then we copy everything. 3 backups, 1 here, 1 with you, 1 somewhere no one would ever look. I'll handle the 3rd," Naomi said. "I know exactly where." We spent the next 6 hours digitizing every document. Graham's legacy wasn't just betrayal, it was financial crime, international, structured, professional, ruthless, and now it was mine to command. Reed drafted a simple letter, a courtesy notice, but I added one final line in my own handwriting, "Try me." We sent it via courier to Gideon Cross. He responded in 15 minutes. He didn't call my phone. He called Naomi's. She handed me the device silently. "Clever," he said the moment I answered. His voice was sharp silk, really. "The vault, the documents. The little game of poker you're playing. This isn't a game," I said. "Oh, it is," he replied. "You just think you're the dealer. I don't bluff," I told him, "and I don't make threats I can't keep," he said. "Do you know how many lawyers I have on retainer? I don't care," I said, "because I'm not going to court." He paused. "Then what do you want?" "Nothing." Silence. "I want you to stop. No calls, no messages, no men in suits hovering outside my street. If I so much as see a shadow, the files go public. IRS, Interpol, Department of Justice." He exhaled slowly. "You don't know what you're stepping into." "Yes, I do," I said, "because unlike you, I don't have a reputation to protect. I don't have assets to hide. I lost everything already." He hesitated. Then he hung up. 2 hours later, Damian Wolfe called. His tone was different, slick, confident, the kind of man who's used to making people disappear. "Vivian Mercer," he said, like it was a greeting for an old lover. "Or is it Evelyn? Now? What do you want?" "I want to help you," he said. "You're in a bad situation. I can fix that." "How simple," he said. "Erase the drive, destroy the records, walk away. We'll make sure you and the boy Miles are taken care of, discreetly, generously. And if I say no," there was a pause, "then I let the others handle it." "Is that a threat?" "No," he said. "It's a forecast." I hung up. Naomi looked at me. "That's your second warning." Miles was pacing in the hallway. "He called me too," he said. "But he wasn't alone." I frowned. "What, he used a new number?" "Then someone else called right after. Woman. Didn't say her name. Just said, 'Check the money trail.'" He handed me a slip of paper. At the bottom, one name. Walter Hensley. "Who's that?" Naomi asked. "Someone Graham mentioned once," Miles said. "Back when I was a kid, said he was the only person who ever told him the truth. I know that name," I said slowly. "He was at their wedding. Nora's." We drove to Savannah that afternoon. 2 hours in the car. Rain tracing the glass like nerves down skin. Walter Hensley lived in a brick house overgrown with ivy, books stacked in windows, like the kind of place that smelled like pipe smoke and unresolved grief. He opened the door without hesitation. "You're Evelyn," he said. I nodded. "And you're Miles," he added. "He told me you'd come, said, 'If it all falls apart, they'll find you.' Come in." The house was warm. Faint music played from another room. He handed me an envelope. "This was for you. Only if you both came together. Inside, a second will, and a name that changed everything. Unborn child of Lana Hughes. 25% of Sable West Holdings in trust until age 21. I felt the blood drain from my face. He planned for everything, even her. "Why not name Lana directly?" I asked. Walter looked up slowly, because he didn't trust the mother he said, but he wouldn't punish the child. Miles exhaled. "Legally, she can't touch that money. "No," I said, "but she'll try." Walter nodded. "And when she does, use this." He pointed at the flash drive I'd slid into my purse. "It's not evidence, it's a sword. Hold it tight." That night, I didn't cry. I wrote a single sentence in my journal. They thought I was the widow, but I'm the executor now. The next morning, we went to the bank. Not to fight, but to end the war. They thought I'd fade into grief. Instead, I became the storm they couldn't outrun. The day we walked into Federal Trust with the original documents, I felt something shift in me. Not just resolve, not just anger, authority. This time I didn't flinch when they asked for ID. I didn't hesitate when we signed the verification ledger. The banker led us through vault corridors like before, but now I was no longer just the widow. I was the executor of Graham Mercer's secret empire. Inside the safe deposit room, Miles placed the newest document next to the flash drive, the second will, the final insurance policy, the only thing keeping Lana's claws from digging into that trust. "I still don't understand why he gave her anything," Miles said quietly. "Because the child didn't ask for this," I replied, and Graham, flawed as he was, had one final act of decency left in him. He knotted lips tight. We copied the documents again. This time, one went into Reed Harrison's office, the other with Naomi, and the last one I buried in the planter box outside Naomi's porch, because when you've been lied to so thoroughly, paranoia becomes instinct. I met with Lana one final time. No brunch, no tea, just a printed summary of the will. I handed it to her wordlessly. She scanned the lines. Her eyes narrowed at the clause, about 25% in trust until age 21. "You can't do this," she hissed. "I didn't," I said. "Graham did." "You're bluffing. There's no way you'd give up control." I leaned in. "I'm not bluffing, Lana. I'm protecting the only person in this mess who didn't lie, cheat, or manipulate anyone." She went still. Her hand drifted to her belly. "You think you've won," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "I think I've survived. There's a difference." I turned and walked away. She didn't follow. That night, I returned to the house Graham and I once shared. I walked through the living room, slowly trailing my fingers along every surface. The couch we'd chosen together, the bookshelves he never let me rearrange, the kitchen table where we used to eat in silence and call it love. Then I opened the closet and packed a single suitcase. I didn't take his ring. I didn't take the framed wedding photo. I left them in the drawer beneath the velvet box where the sapphire necklace once lay, because those belonged to the illusion, not to me. 1 week later, I boarded a flight to Colorado. Miles helped me find the house, a small cottage nestled beneath the Rockies, surrounded by pines and fog. Naomi handled the lease. Reed finalized the trust files. No headlines, no courtroom, just quiet victory. I changed my name on the mailbox, not to erase who I was, but to reclaim who I'd become. 3 months passed. Miles visited every other weekend. We didn't talk about Graham unless necessary. Instead, we rebuilt something honest, something that had nothing to do with shared bloodlines and everything to do with shared truths. The baby was born in January. Lana sent a photo. I didn't respond. I sent a trust confirmation through Reed, sealed, signed. She won't touch a cent of it. Not until the child is old enough to know who her father truly was and who tried to weaponize that legacy. And Graham, he became distant in my memory, not erased, but demystified. Not the man who brought lilies on Sundays, not the man who smiled at dinner and said I'll be home at 7, but the man who fractured 3 lives for comfort. The man who, in the end, tried to fix what he broke. Too little, too late. Now when I walk through the trees behind my Colorado home, I don't think about vaults and safes and lies. I think about silence. The kind of silence that doesn't crush you but clears the air. Naomi calls it peace. I call it freedom. So no, I wasn't the woman who was lied to. I was the woman who outlived the lie. And if anyone comes looking for what Graham left behind, they'll find something they didn't expect. Not a grieving widow, not a broken wife, but a woman who knows exactly where the bodies are buried and which keys open which doors. And That's the kind of woman you never corner again. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who claim to love you? Share your story below and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon. Because on this channel, we don't just survive betrayal, we rewrite the ending.